welcome to Love Always Self. I'm Shyra.
Hey y'all, I'm Karista, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Love Always Self.
Hi.
And welcome. Oh man, it has been a wild couple of weeks. Just got back from being out of town, went to Portugal with my mama. Beautiful country, beautiful people, so rich with like culture and history. And it was just so wonderful to travel around and get to experience the Portugal culture, their food, their wine, the people. Fantastic. Absolutely loved it.
I have some envy that I'm working on. Little bit of jealousy, you know.
That's okay. It's understandable. And I validate you. I understand.
I saw Carrie would send me pictures and some short videos while she was gone. And I was just like, oh,
yes.
bring it in.
I definitely shared some of the favorites of the 600 photos that I took. I will have to go through those and work those out a little bit. But it was really, really nice. And it's wonderful actually to be back and be in my own bed. And I missed my friends and my family, my spouse, miss my dogs. Oh my gosh. I have had some crazy good morning snuggles with my dog Nova. And so I'm not gonna lie, I really missed her a lot.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That the dog love is so unconditional. It's like nothing other.
Absolutely. So, you know, we definitely don't deserve these little guys. Or big guys, whatever size they are, they're phenomenal and they are a gift to our lives for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're back. And I feel like I've word vomited like quite a bit. And I try to go as like as fast as humanly possible. It's like, I got to tell you everything that's been going on over the several weeks you've been gone.
It was like speed conversations for sure. Yeah. It's definitely hard not to keep in touch regularly, especially with your besties. There was a lot to cover. I think there's still a lot more that will come up, especially because it was 16 days and we normally talk to each other at least every other day.
Right.
So I'm sure more things will come up and come into the light. But what we wanted to talk about today, some of the things that I learned watching and experiencing and interacting with people in other countries and just seeing how people live, I wanted to bring up the topic of compassion and the qualities that really support being able to hold compassion for others. Yeah. Because don't get me wrong, like the trip was very memorable, but there were some experiences that were very stressful. Our flight out of Austin was delayed to the point where we actually missed our connecting flight to the Azores, which was very unfortunate because being able to be in the Azores was kind of a wash, just because we didn't have a large amount of time that we had planned to be there. So that was unfortunate. That was disappointing. But it definitely led to creating some awareness or at least some lessons for me to learn throughout, my travels. But, the key one being like how we hold compassion for people. And, one of the things that I experienced personally was a lack of patience, especially when missing the flight. I'm going to validate myself. I think it's valid to feel frustrated when the airlines are not able to follow what they say they're going to do.
Yeah, that happens.
But, things happen like Mother Nature. So one of the reasons why our flight was delayed was because there was a storm moving through Austin. There were other things that were involved that I still haven't garnered much compassion for, but...
I'm still working on that.
Well, we'll just say the education of processes for some of the airline employees, there was room for improvement there. Anyways,
no.
Yeah.
I think the reason I'm laughing is not only have I been in your situation, maybe not, I was just trying to come home on mine. From a work trip, you were actually trying to go and have fun.
Yes.
And that puts a whole other level of oh my word.
It dampened it a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's unfortunate to start a trip where you're feeling a little bit defeated or stressed or overwhelmed by, the changes in the itinerary and having to trade a couple nights on an island for a night in Newark, New Jersey.
Oh, when you say it that way, that hurt more.
Yeah. I mean,
Ouch.
for those that, live in New Jersey and you love it, wonderful. It's just, I didn't really enjoy my experience because it was midnight getting out of the airport and getting to the hotel. And, they required us to check our carry-on bags. And then I didn't have a toothbrush and, my night guard because I grind because I guess I hold a lot of stress in my jaw. And, so yeah, it was definitely a test in patience. And that is something that I've learned is helpful when we are also learning to provide compassion for people or situations.
Well, a lot of times you're not tested with patience and until you're reaching a point of needing to learn compassion. That I swear, patience, as we know, letting go and patience are my two highest lessons. Kryptonites. And lessons, apparently. And my guides have told me this on a number of occasions. We tend to share. Mm-hmm. We tend to share
some similar experiences, for sure.
Yeah, little mirrors.
It is interesting reflecting back on each other, for sure.
Yeah.
One of the instances that I experienced was when we were on one of the flights back home. Not back to Austin, but we actually had a stopover in Chicago. We decided we wanted to go have a nice meal in Chicago, listen to some music, which we were too tired. We ended up not going to listen to music, but fine, whatever. We did what we needed to do for our bodies. But when we were flying back, it was a flight from Amsterdam to Chicago, which was a 9-hour flight. And my mom sat at the window seat. I was in the middle seat, took a bullet for the team here. And then a gentleman was sitting in the aisle seat. And I've never experienced this before, but it was a very awkward situation because 9-hour flight, right? Most people have to go to the bathroom at least once if they have a healthy bladder and kidney during a 9-hour time frame.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
The gentleman, don't know how he did it, did not. But my mom and I, we did.
Yeah. Which means you had to go around him.
Yeah. And, we had to ask for him to move out of the way. And so the first time that we went to the bathroom, I tapped his shoulder and he seemed very disgruntled. And he shifted, but didn't get up out of the seat, just moved his knees over and kind of like huffed while he did it. He just, everything about his energy, his expressions, his body language.
He's just not happy with it.
Yeah. He was not pleased with our request. And so my mom and I, we ended up having to climb over his lap and it was almost ass to face kind of thing. And I was very uncomfortable, especially being a woman that doesn't necessarily want to put herself in compromising positions, just having to squeeze past in this tight space. Come on, airplanes are not that robust in space.
Right. Unless you're in first class.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, that'd be nice. Maybe when I win the lottery one
Bless
day.
you guys for being able to do that.
Good for you.
Good for you.
So that was a very awkward situation. And when, I definitely made it to where I didn't have to ask for myself personally. So when my mom would go to the bathroom, I would go to the bathroom, take advantage of that. I'd wait for her to be done so that we would go back together so we could reduce the number of times that we were asking this gentleman to move out of the way. So second time came around and God, I was like, we're only 2 hours away. Can you hold it?
That's so sad.
Because it was, again, very uncomfortable. And I am somebody that is, I like to think that I'm pretty conscious and aware of making people feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And I like to avoid that as much as possible. And this next time that I asked him to move, I was like, okay, how do I address this awkward situation? And so I was like, all right, kill him with kindness,
You
right?
got this.
Because the first time I just tapped him on the shoulder, didn't ask him anything, didn't like speak to him, just like, hey. And so the second time I leaned over and I was like, sir, I am so sorry for this inconvenience. My mom and I, we really have to go to the bathroom again. And he did the same gesture where he was
man.
disgruntled, like huffed and moved his knees to the side, but didn't get up, didn't unbuckle his seatbelt, like just like shut his book, slammed it shut and just, and the difference was the person in front of him was leaning back. So now this is about 3 inches of space. And I just like surveyed this for like, I don't know, it felt like a good 15 seconds. It was probably less, but I was just kind of like looking back and forth like,
How am I going to get through there? Yeah.
and finally I leaned over and I was like, sir, I'm so sorry, but I don't think I can fit through there. And so he like grabbed the lady's seat from behind, yanked himself up, which caused her to kind of like startle and turn back around to see what the heck was going on. Excuse me.
No, I mean, I feel you. Yeah.
And he just like got up, was still very huffy about it. And so when we got back, again, I leaned over to my mom and I was like, oh man, that was super awkward. That was really uncomfortable. And later on, I was just thinking like, why would he respond like that? Because in reality, I have no idea what's going on with this person.
That right there.
I have
Right.
no understanding of his experiences and what he is feeling physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And I don't know if he's in pain or if he's dealing with an emotional, thing that's going on in his head or in his heart. Like, I have no idea. Now, I'm not sitting here trying to apply these potential things to him, but I'm just acknowledging that I really don't know what's going on with him.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that although this would be a great way to give somebody the benefit of the doubt that maybe the reasoning was sufficient for his behavior, it also leans back into you have no idea.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So while I'm still valid in my feeling that it was very uncomfortable, it was an awkward situation. It made it difficult for me to ask for him to move out of the way, to even want to ask him to, allow us around to go to the restroom and relieve ourselves. And I think that this was a aha moment for me, that to be able to hold compassion, and this is not in every situation, sometimes that compassion can be held without requiring patience from you. But sometimes to be able to have compassion, we also must have patience as well.
And you're never tested for patience. You're never tested for patience. It's what I mean by that is that you're never tested for compassion without being tested for patience. in a lot of times. What I'm saying? Like,
Or vice versa, right? Like one or the other.
maybe it goes hand in hand.
I think it does.
Yeah.
Again, like you can hold compassion for like the call to action, right? On like a TV commercial to give money towards an animal shelter, right? You can have compassion and be like, oh, I like, that makes me so sad. Like, I wish I could give to them. I wish I could snuggle with them and just take that moment to send love to those poor animals and hope that they receive it at some level. But sometimes that testing of the patience requires a level of compassion.
Yes,
I think that's what you were trying to say.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
It's been a day. But my point is that usually your compassion, when held within, comes out naturally in scenarios where it needs to be presented or you feel that it's being presented, but you're never tested on your compassion without likely being tested on your patience.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get at. I couldn't come up with all those words for a minute. So, yeah.
That was more clear. Yeah. No, I do agree with that. And, another, I think, quality, again, and this may be, I don't know, duh for some, right? Is that it's a practice in kindness also.
Oh, yeah. Hugely.
And this always circles back to love.
Always. Every time.
And this lesson made me remember one of the Bible verses, love is patient, love is kind. We hear that at weddings all the time. Right. And, granted, it's hard to have that always. And just because we aren't able to carry that always doesn't mean we don't love. It's just, it's remembering that it's worth the practice to practice those things. And I keep saying practice, practice, practice. And maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah, there's definitely a reason for that. We are all pretty quick. Not all. There's a lot of people that don't do this, but most of us that I know of are pretty quick to snap judgment, right? And this is my issue with judgment is that, and I'm just as guilty, so no judgment, but we have the tendency to place the judgment on someone's behaviors or actions before seeking to understand them. And sometimes we don't have the patience to even try to seek to understand them. And even more so, sometimes we're not placed in scenarios to even want or open a conversation to seek to understand them. You're sitting next to, in your example, you're sitting next to a stranger on an airplane who is clearly not wanting to engage with anybody else, right?
That's very true.
And that's not exactly the moment to be like, hey, new bestie.
Yeah.
Makes it harder to seek to understand, right? So you had to exercise and come into a place of being compassionate, being kind, and good for you for standing your kind grounds, right? When not given that same thing in return.
Yeah.
And that's a lot harder to do.
I agree that it's nice when we can seek to understand.
Yeah.
But that's not always the scenario that's presented to us.
Exactly.
And so I don't know who the quote is by, but I did jot this down while I was out of town, that it's not about understanding. It's about loving.
Because if you just love something, like, you don't have to understand it. You just show the compassion because the love is present no matter what.
Absolutely. There it is. That's the end of it, guys. Bye.
And welcome to Love Always Self podcast.
But there were plenty of moments that it was a test in patience and a test on my compassion as well for the experiences of others or the situations that I was put in or that I presented in. I don't want to say that in a victimized role, right? Like I chose to go. I chose to go and experience this journey. And that's what it was. It was not just a journey of traveling onto the other side of the world. Yeah. It was a journey of reflection within and looking at how we can then express that love outward without necessarily having to understand or be so connected to everybody around us, right? Like seeking that connection, like besties, right?
Right.
You can still have compassion without understanding.
Yeah. I like the fact that we have the ability to choose. And that became very present in my awareness over the last several weeks, even when you weren't here. But the consistency of you have a choice. You have a choice in the way you respond to something. You have a choice in the way you perceive something. You have a choice in the judgment that you place on others. Like all of this are choices that we make throughout our lives. And so because you were presented with a choice, and your choice was to show somebody kindness and compassion, regardless of the scenario, regardless of the fact that you were placed in a pretty awkward situation there. And the fact that you still chose to open your awareness and your thoughts towards, I don't really understand why this individual is behaving the way they are, but maybe it's not my place to understand. Maybe it's just my place to hold space within me for once,
Yeah.
right? You don't even have to hold space for the other person, but by way of holding space for yourself, you did hold space for the other person.
I mean, I definitely hold space for validating my experience of it being an awkward situation and me feeling very uncomfortable, right?
Right.
Like, but I also acknowledge that I chose the route of, in my head, okay, I can kill him with kindness, right? Like
Right.
you catch more bees with honey. And that was a conscious decision in that moment. Is
Right.
this second time I'm asking him to move out of the way for me to go to the restroom, I was like, how do I approach this?
Right.
And, I could have been rude. I could have been demanding. I could have like name called. Like I could have taken it to a different place. But I also recognize that doing those things creates a different vibration within me that I don't want to feed.
Yes.
And then on top of that, if I acted that way towards him, that would feed his negativity as well.
And then you have a whole situation on a very small plate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm just going to choose kill him with kindness
Right.
and order more wine. Yeah. Yeah. So that was one of the lessons of many that I took away from this trip. And I will miss Portugal. I do look forward to going back. I would love to share it with
Me.
you and with
like, I'm
other friends. And I think it would be a great re-experience as well.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that you got to go. I'm glad you got to experience the atmosphere and the culture and the scenery and the food. So jealous about the food. And just, oh man, the beaches.
Oh man.
What?
So we actually did like a road trip through the entire southern coast, which is the Algarve region.
Wow.
And it was beautiful. And it was cool because, it's like maybe an hour and a half drive from one end to the other. Yeah.
I was like,
Maybe 2 hours.
yeah.
But we stopped at like 3 or 4 different beaches, and every single beach was unique in its own
That's
way.
cool.
Like one of them was like quintessential flat, beautiful sand and ocean. Another one was like bright red rocks and super like hilly, like cliffs with trees. And then another one was like super rocky and had like the rocks jutting out from the water, and the water was super clear. It was fascinating, to experience the different areas. And then Lisbon, I really enjoyed the city of Lisbon. It was beautiful. And again, like the history behind it and the history behind Portugal, it was so cool because did you know Portugal is one of the oldest countries that was ever founded?
That makes sense. That checks out.
It also used to be one of the richest.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That also checks out.
It was just, it was really neat hearing about, how Portugal was developed, and it was awesome. And then Porto was a northern city, and that's the southern tip of the Douro Valley, which is where all the port wine comes from. Like that region, if it's not from there, it's not port wine.
Oh my goodness.
And of course, all the other
Good to know.
wineries, it was delicious, and it was
I bet it was. She said delicious.
yes.
I feel like that word really does describe that, doesn't it?
Does. I would like to go back to the Azores so I can really appreciate that. I'm not going to lie. That was a bit disappointing, but it is what it is, because that pause in Newark New Jersey, it gave us time to actually reevaluate our itinerary because originally we were supposed to go to Spain too. And we decided to cut those 3 days out and add them to
Wow.
Lisbon and Porto. And it was more relaxed at that point. And we were really needing that after
I was
the
gonna
whole
say,
debacle at the beginning. So
I feel like that's one of those, you were given quite a few gifts during your trip.
And sorry, what was interesting though is in the airport at New Jersey, my mom and I had this like come to Jesus moment where we were like, do you want to go to Spain? Like, do you want to force this? And both of us were like, well, I was forcing it because you wanted it. And it was kind of like, again, another aha moment that we think we're doing it for the other person. And we're not really feeling like it's in alignment, but we're afraid to verbalize it because we don't want to disappoint the other one.
Wow. That's an even bigger lesson.
It is a big lesson.
Yeah. Oh, man, so many goodies. And
I have quite a bit.
still gonna dream about the port. Just, wine and all. But I'm glad you got to go. I'm glad you got to have those experiences, babe. I'm really glad you're home.
Yeah.
Maybe not rejoining to the mundane, but
Yeah. If anything, that is not something I missed. Like the laundry or, we did do some sink laundry.
Oh,
because we just did carry on. So
that's an experience all in itself.
Yeah, like washing your socks and underwear in the sink, like in the hotel, and then hanging them up.
Feels very eat, pray, love.
We'll call it very European. Yeah, it was kind of in a sense for sure.
Yeah.
That was the first time I was ever able to pack light, so that was cool. Good job on my part.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah. So it was good. It was good.
Aw. Well, I hope that you've gained some knowledge in listening to today's episode and watching this on YouTube. And of course, we would normally end our episodes with a collective card reading. We had a little bit of a moment with the cards today.
They didn't want to.
They were very clear about, we're not doing this today. So we're like, okay, we listen when presented with these.
We're going to try practicing not forcing the issue.
Exactly. We're going to let go of control. We're not going to force the cards. If the collective does not need to hear that card reading, and maybe it's just this message that you needed to hear today, whenever you fall upon it at whatever point in time.
One final thought. I think too, it's not just about practicing compassion and patience and kindness and love with others, but also with yourself.
Oh my gosh. Because it always starts here. And repeat name of our actual podcast. That's very helpful. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of our podcast, go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, notification bells. It helps us.
It
really
helps
does.
the podcast grow. It helps the message be reached by more people around the world. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Love Always Self on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts.
Very true.
Did you know we have a website?
We have a website.
Yes, we do. It's at lovealwaysself.com. Surprise.
And when we do have a collective card reading, you can actually go to our Amazon shop and choose to sort through any of the cards that we have there. And
as well as the gratitude journal that we've created, especially for you guys.
Yes, I do love that gratitude journal. It's actually right behind the camera. So if I look over there, that's what I'm looking at because it's so pretty. Well done, Carrie. Well done on that one. Oh my goodness. Anyway, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, year, month, day, evening, morning, afternoon, whatever it is in your time and reference.
We just hope you enjoy. We love you guys. Don't forget to love first,
Love last,
and love always.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, listener, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us in this moment. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to our next connection.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow to stay notified of new content from Love Always Self. If you have any questions or topics you'd like for us to discuss, please hit us up on any of our social media platforms linked in the show notes below.
I'm Karista.
And I'm Shyra.
And until next time, remember to love first
Love last.
and love always. Love Always Self podcast is meant for entertainment purposes only. We do not make any warranties about the completeness, reliability, and accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. Any action you choose to take upon the information in this podcast is strictly done so at your own risk, and we will not be held liable for any losses and damages in connection with the use of our podcast. Any and all medical concerns should be addressed with a licensed healthcare provider, as well as any questions that may be derived from the information discussed in this podcast.